Might makes right, and Bully Boyz is best. Now today we're going to talk about the Bully Boy archetypes. If you don't know, that simply means a style, foundational pieces that you'll be using, the framework of your list. So today we'll be unpacking some exciting versions of that, the most up-to-date ones as of the time of this recording, and I'll be taking into consideration the data slate with these. Therefore, we'll talk about if there is point adjustments and changes. Well, then those will be taken into consideration as well. So, of course, let me know what your Bully Boyz list is looking like, because that's one of the detachments that's most up for grabs and consideration for the data slate changes that are coming up, and as one of the most appealing orc detachments as a whole. So make sure you also utilize today's sponsor, the Adept role. Because of the way that Bully Boyz are being used in the meta, there's a lot to be taken into consideration. Many factors, enemies always need to be accounted for, and Adept role does that for you. Whether it's your Meganobz going in, your Knobs, your Gaz, your Beast Snagga Boys, or Zod just needing to endure enough pain. You can always find out with Adept role how that's going to roll out for you, at least on average. So, of course, you can think, well, I roll this out myself at home, and I do the math. But is it enough? Does it do give you the charts, the graphs, and also keep those stats in a nice little data bank so that you can always take your meta into consideration and what you've done before? So check out Adept Roll, today's sponsor. So let's look at one of my favorite versions of the Bully Boyz. We got the Pain War. Now, there are several versions of this. This is why we talk about archetypes, but this is the one that currently is being utilized at the time of this recording most. The other version of this is without pigs, you'd be running mobs of boys. So as you can see here, we call it the Pain Wall because everything's going to have a feel no pain. Now, in the current meta, going elite, heavy, strong into the anti-tanks is actually quite important. Other versions of this, you would flop out the Squighogs boys or some boys and some pain boys with war bosses attached, or Beast Snagga boys and have a pain boss attached. But the point would be ablative wounds and feel no pains on all of your units. So let's get into what else tools you would want in this. Now, we start off with a Beast Boss on Squighosaur and Mazrog. They are going with your 2 pig units. You need that double wall, and you want it to have it in your back pocket. Now, keep in mind, we all know that pigs are a bit overcosted, but the only time they really feel valuable and durable is when they're sitting down their 5-up feel no pain and the 5-up invuln. And so that's why this actually works. Now, there is to be accounted for that you might want to consider putting this unit into reserves. As you can see throughout the rest of this list, is that you don't have a teleport or mega war boss, right? So you don't have your typical QRF teleporter unit of Meganobz. So in this case, you could consider reserving one of these bricks, as they are quite still big, even if it's minimized unit. But what you also have to soak up some anti-tank shots and to actually kind of divert attention from the pigs are 2 big mechs in mega armor. Yes, not the war bosses in mega armor, of course, because your Meganobz are the only units that are going to be utilizing strats anyways on this list. Therefore, you're going to be re-rolling hits on their version of Armor of Contempt, and therefore the Big Mech and Mega Armor gives you the 4-up invuln, giving you the ability to regen Meganobz and then possibly heal one if one's left a little bit hurt. That definitely helps, because if you were to only bring war bosses and Mega Armor, it would be quite easy to kind of pick apart this army. I'll just ignore the pigs for a little bit, and I'll just focus on the Meganobz when they don't have an invuln, vice versa, depending on how the wall is being called and what's being exposed. But in this case, the Meganobz are really meant to act as a bait early game, pull out the enemy's assets and resources so that you can make contact with your Gaz, with your Squig and pigs, of course. So the fact that you can also re-roll the hits when shooting means you have a little bit of chaff clearing ability. So we'll talk about that as well. But what we already mentioned was Ghazghkull Thraka. Now, he's always contentious, but this is the list where we're bringing him in. Just sitting on the fact that, hey, I also have a 2-up invuln on him, and we're playing the mid-table, baby, right? So this is one of those lists where one of your pigs could be used to kind of harass an enemy natural expansion, play your natural triangle, which would be the primary, your natural expansion, and then your home. Sorry, I said primary, I meant the middle. So that's where you would stage up Gaz. Gaz is playing the middle. You have your Big Mech and Mega Armor running towards your natural expansion. You have your other Big Mech and Mega Armor baiting the middle, possibly early game, to draw your assets out. And then you double down with Gaz and that second unit of Mans, acting as I can continue to hold the objective while the pigs and Gaz move up the field. Then you have the Weird Boy. You look at the Weird Boy, what is going on with this kid? This is someone who can be taken into consideration if Snickrot does come down in points. If the data slate is true and the characters in this list are going down, the Meganobz are going down, and Snickrot goes down, Snickrot is someone who could replace the Weird Boy on this list at kind of the recording if those point changes are as somewhat true or not. So Snickrot is someone that could be swapped for the Weird Boy because the Weird Boy in this list has no battle line or knobs to attach to. So he is acting like a Snickrot where he's just looking to score secondaries. Therefore, a Snickrot would be an obvious upgrade to this if those point changes were to change. If not, you simply use the Weird Boy for his scoring ability. Then you have 2 trucks, which typically, of course, are for your Big Mech and Mega Armors. But there is also one of these Meganobz units does not have a character. Yeah. Whoa. Like a lot of the time, people always want to just put triple characters on all your units. But in this case, I misspoke. I don't know why I said that. We're going to have a different list, but this list does all 3 units do have the Meganobz character. Sorry, I don't know why I said that. I was looking at the combi weapons. But when we were talking about the ranged weapons and the combi weapons from the Big Mech and Mega Armor, in this case, I do want the dev wounds. There are certain matchups where I'm looking to actually chip down the enemies with dev wounds from shooting a little bit. Doesn't mean I'm always going to do it. Doesn't mean it'll always be valuable. If you want to bring the twin kill saws and Mega, that's also totally viable. On the Gaz unit, it's always valuable to bring one unit with a power that has a power claw in one hand and a twin kill saw. A kill saw on the other hand. That way you can actually choose which profile is better into the unit you're going into. So for the Big Mechs and Mega Armor, I typically like the combi weapon and the power claw. He already innately rerolls once to hit, so you actually be able to get some shots off while you're standing out there waiting for the enemy to kind of bait. It allows you to kill those little chaffy T3 models that people might be throwing towards you, whether it's some sort of infiltrator unit, some kind of scouting unit, trying to hold your Bully Boys back, your Meganobz, and kind of come forward and really pull out those enemy assets. And then 2 units of Storm Boys just for scoring. Now, like I said, if you were to change this list to be fitting boys instead, it would still play out quite simply the same, but you would remove the Squighog boys and then bring battle wagons with boys inside of them. Or if you were playing on terrain that allowed for you to bring only 1 battle wagon because you could stage easily with the boys and Megan and then Gaz in the middle, that'd be good as well. You might have to lose Gaz on that iteration of the list because you're adding Pain Boys and War Bosses on your list. So in that case, you would run possibly a naked Meganobz unit. That's where I was getting ahead of myself. Sorry about that. So if you were to adjust this list as a Pain Wall archetype, and you were to just remove the pigs and 2 big 20-man unit of boys, then you would probably drop Ghazghkull and probably go with what we would call a naked Bully Boyz Meganobz unit, which means it has no leader because it still has access to all the stratagems and can act as an early game kind of skirmishing kind of trading gift. Now, remember, this is live, so anything you say in chat, at the end, I'm going to respond and kind of look through the chat to see what else you guys got to say about this. And of course, shout out to Rewatch Gang. Leave comments, let us know what you think too. So this is my most fun version of the Bully Boyz, to be honest, when I'm trying to just play a nice elite version of Orcs, get a nice casual beer and pretzel kind of game, sit back with my homies, maybe even play a smaller version of 1,500 points where the units can actually feel a bit more tough, maybe even 1,000 points with you. That's a different kind of style of list there. Nonetheless, this is what I find to be still able to push through to win games at events if matchup dependent, of course. Some armies will have the tools to, you know, completely maybe even out OC you if it's not just based off the ability to kill you, right? So there are times that, of course, like always for Bully Boyz. But nonetheless, this kind of list actually is, I would give it a nice 7.5 rating on its actual competitiveness. Even in the current meta, with people being kind of tailored to killing infantry, elite infantry, and vehicles, just because everything on here has the same unreliable dying, you know, math. Even shout out to Adept roll, where if you put these units up against any kind of matchup, the enemy can't reliably dig it out without putting, you know, an overkill probability amount of assets into them, which allow your other units to actually make contact and continue the momentum on this list. But other than that, and that still counts for the boys as well, right? Having enough boys and ablative wounds counts as the same thing. Now I just, instead of having killing potential from the pigs, I have just a bunch of OC and single wound bodies that you're trying to pull apart before I score enough points. But outside of the pain wall, let's move on to the Zod pit. Now, I know some people are tired of Zod, don't want to like Zod, don't want to hear about Zod. I'll just tell you right now, if you want the most competitive version of Bully Boyz, Zod pit or some version of Zod pit is what I would say is the most competitive version. I did have my time of trying to play Bully Boyz, as I do every single detachment before I do these videos. And the one thing I found is I really needed the Zod pit. Now, people do contend me on this and say, well, he just simply dies too easily. You know, it's about where he's dying. It's about when he's dying, and it's about him dying only when he has that 5-up invuln. And typically, he's going for the enemy natural expansion. So with this Zod pit, and the reason I decided to name it the Zod pit archetype is because he is really the glue that holds this list together, right? Typically, your Waaagh, your Bully Waaagh, is suffering from the fact that you're somewhat slow, and you really try to make contact with both of your Waaghs with enough assets. Zod allows you to make contact with a lot of assets typically, or at least always make contact with a valuable asset on the Waaagh, which is typically going to be near the enemy natural expansion or in very interesting gunline units. And sometimes it might be that you are actually acting as a bulwark to stop enemies from being able to get the initiative on your Meganobz or other units that are moving up the field and positioning while you're setting up for that second Waaagh. So Zod really does matter in the Zod pit. But let's talk about what goes around the Zod pit as we unpack this a little bit more. So we have 2 Beast Boss units. Of course, they do have the good old-fashioned Beast Snagga boys. This is where you actually have some OC, and the Feel No Pains do feel a little bit nice in some matchups. Now, of course, guys, I'm just like you. I've rolled those games where the Feel No Pains do absolutely nothing. And then I've rolled those games where they've saved me. So just bringing it into consideration, it still does feel kind of nice. And in this case, you actually will enjoy Ed Stampa on that Beast Boss. Then you have 1 War Boss, but you have no knobs. So this War Boss is going for the boys. There's 2 10-man units of boys on this list, but the War Boss is going on one of those 10-man units of boys. Just because, to be fair, it's a good cost for +1 to hit on a volume of strength 5 punches on the Waaagh with, what is that, 13 power claw punches on the Waaagh as well. So for the points and its ability to flip an objective when it's time to get going, the Bully Boyz are going to come out. Now, as for the trucks, we have 3 trucks, which is what I find to be the correct amount of trucks at the current time of the meta, and even depending on WTC or GW terrain. It's because you really don't want too many, as then the enemy will always have the ability to pop one of your assets, and you won't really be able to stage safely. In this case, you have Zod in the middle. You have 1 truck possibly staging near the enemy natural expansion, 1 moving towards your own, and then 1 staged up near the middle as well, or kind of offset from either of those to act as a response unit. So that's, in this case, we also have a 10-man unit of commandos, because this is where it's the hard part of selling this list to some people who don't want to play the cunning version of Bully Boyz, is the fact that you're paying for the commandos almost as a tax for the Zod pit to work more reliably into a multitude of matchups. So you are using them to stop the enemy from denying Zod, or just removing the enemy's own infiltration units, possibly even making early game charges and killing enemy units alongside Zod in the wall as well. So he can either act as another way to make contact, like I said at the beginning of this. When you're playing a Zod pit and you're playing the Bully Boy in general, you really relying on making contact with enough units on the Bully Boys, on the first wall, excuse me. And Bully Boys, it's not about damage like the Warhorde. A lot of time people want to say that you're playing just like Warhorde. You're not. It's a similar style, but it's not the same, because in Warhorde, you're trying to break the enemy's back with your Waaagh in a way that they can't respond hard enough to finish you off. And same with the Hunt in that case. In Bully Boys, it's more about grabbing the hold of the enemy, you can think it, or of a 1-2 combo where I'm jabbing you and then coming through with a cross or a hook, whatever it may be, or that I'm reaching out and getting a hold of the enemy and then I'm coming and clobbering them with the chopper. You can kind of unfold that archetype at the most simplest form like this, right? That I'm reaching out to you with either Zod and the Snaggas. And in this list is where you would have an actual native naked Meganobz unit. So a lot of the times I would actually start off, you would start with either the naked boys, the naked Meganobz units, and Zod for that first wall. So it's your cheaper assets, but they're going to feel just tough enough to draw on the enemy and for the Zod and for the wall to be valuable. Now, if you can get the Mandos in on that first wall, that's cool. If you can't because you need to use them to just completely screen out the enemy, that's fine too. Taking board presence, very important to get value out of the Zod. So, but that being said, then you come in with the real meat on this list, right? So as you can see, these are 2 6-man units. You can either stick one of these units on the teleporter, which is typically what you're doing, as that's the most valuable for its ingress. It just increases its profile. And then you're putting one of these in a truck, possibly naked, and then the other one is the 5-man unit with the War Boss and Mega Armor. Now, if you think you can get away with not being in a truck for some reason for a War Boss and Mega Armor, sure, you could put the War Boss and Mega Armor on a 6-man unit, but then it can't get in the truck. You can also play leapfrog, as in where the Meganobz are staged near that truck. The first naked boy unit runs out to get excited. The first naked Meganobz unit gets excited, and then a different Meganobz unit gets inside of it as it repositions. So there might be a little bit of leapfrogging that you may need to pull off to get the mobility off of this Zod list. Nonetheless, I personally like running twin kill saws. In this case, my Snaggas are doing enough killing of everything else, so I'm looking for the AP from that, and that's why I like to use twin kill saws in this case. I have enough punches from just 1 AP between the boys and the Snaggas, and I like how much OC is on this list as a whole. Between Zod, all the boys, the Grots that are on the list, just the 10-man, even, and then just even 10-man units of Commandos, the Snaggas, it just feels right, because typically Bully Boys would lose the elite on elite matchup because we're not elite enough to really punch through the elites, and then we don't have enough OC to really beat them on the other aspects of the game. In this case, we have both. We can be just elite enough to be punchy and beating and bullying people, and then the other case we can still play the mission. So Zod Pit is my #1 pick for the current time of the Bully Boys. The viability of this list probably bright it up to an 8.5. It can really be punishing for armies that want to castle or play the game slow, or those enemies that are a bit more passive. There are armies that have just enough damage. For example, let's say Thousand Suns, that can just probably just melt you, or if you are full potential, just standing at a full potential, maybe CSM with Abaddon and double Hellbrutes with a bunch of vehicles, right? In that case, you could probably take enough damage. But with critical 5+s on all of it and re-rolling oaks, in that case, maybe you will then be losing assets too fast. But other than these very, very damaging units, there's a good chance that you can just close the distance with that early want and then come to and clobber them out. So then let's move on to, well, what if I just don't have and don't want to use a bunch of Meganobz? Then it's called the boss wall. If we move on to the boss wall. So in this one, I did at least keep one Meganobz unit on the list because I assume most people that are playing Bully Boys, but I did pull a poll out. So make sure you guys are actually interacting with the poll that I put out while you're live. But I figure at least if you're playing Bully Boyz, you want at least one Meganobz unit. Because you want those double 5-up feel no pains, but there's some people that just want to try to close the distance with it and like the simplicity of it. So I decided to incorporate a more simple unit that doesn't fall back on all Meganobz. Now I will say this unit does hope to be on a little bit more of a dense table. Maybe not the most viable on every GW layout terrain, but it would be good on maybe a Crusade, a Narrative, a WTC board, maybe on UKTC because it can stage a little bit easier. Not that they're that dense. Like, I'm not saying UKTC is dense, but UKTC does have at least a solid staging for this. So it might be all right. Not that I've actually used it on there yet. So in this one, we do have Snikrot and Ghazghkull. Like I said, at the time of this recording, if Snikrot goes down, and if Bully Boyz go down, Meganobz go down, the list might adjust slightly in this one, not as much as the others. So we have a Beast Boss with a 20-man unit. This is the mid-table bullies on this list. As you've seen on both of the other archetypes we showed earlier, there's always some in the middle that's trying to stand and bang. Here you have Gaz, and instead of having a certain kind of tar pit unit or a big elite Meganobz brick or Squig brick, whatever it may be, you're having a bunch of Snaggas sitting on that 5-up feeling invuln and the 6-up feel no pain. They would be very good into something like your demon meta if you run into Necron Catan players and such. Enemies that don't have great armor saves that are running on 4-up arm invulns typically, they'll be very susceptible to this combo of Ghazghkull and the Beast Snagga boys re-rolling for the hits and lethals. Now, it's not as viable as the Warhorde version, but in this case, if you're stuck in a fight and you can keep going, you're still going to be chewing through them, and it's about winning the middle objective. Boss Snikrot doing Boss Snikrot things. He can stage up early to stop the enemy from taking nice infiltration spots that you don't want them to dig in. Or if the enemy's hyper aggressive and you don't want him to get eaten up early, deploy him backline, move everything forward, and then pick him up and move him later, turn 3 or 4. Then we have 2 war bosses on this list. So I like that this list isn't so character heavy, though it does have a good amount of characters to be taken into consideration. So 2 war bosses, that's it. Nice and clean. Now, in this list, you can actually more likely put it on the Breaker Boys and the Knob units, even though there's contention that, hey, I could just let the Knobs be naked. But most people want the 5-up and, the -1 to wound. Now, you do have 2 10-man units of boys, and I like those because these are what I want to go out early game. Let the naked boys kind of run out and start being aggressive, or maybe be on the first wall that I have, and make people just try to dig them out, get good trades going. Boys still feel all right on that wall, and you also I appreciate sticky. A lot of things are happening in the mid-table, and I want to, if I can, sticky my home and sticky the natural expansion. Or just go harass the people, the little chaff trash that people try to steal their own natural expansion with early, right? The scouts, come get them. Let me get them, lads. Then we do have 2 trucks because we have 1 battle wagon. So I didn't want to lean too vehicle heavy either. Like I said, this list is maybe the least competitive, as in like high tier. I don't see anybody, winning GTs with this style of archetype necessarily, but I can totally see people winning games, and I was too. So yeah, but you do have the battle wagon simply for the Snagga boys, and then you have the trucks for the knobs or for one of the boys units. Or you can do SWAT teams where you have the Breaker Boys and the Flash Kids. You can also utilize reserves. Now, you need to use reserves because you don't have the typical teleporter QRF again on this list. So some people will say, well, I'll bring my Breaker Boys from reserve, and because they have the reroll charges, that's fine. I typically like to put them in a truck alongside the knobs, and then letting something else either leapfrog for the most part, and then maybe like a 5-man unit of Flash Kits in reserve if I'm not putting them into a truck with the Breaker Boys, though typically I would to maintain the SWAT team. You also have 3 Gretchen units because you simply need more stuff. And I would actually consider the Gretchen unit, one of them, also being a unit that I put in reserve. So if it's not the 10-man boys or the Gretchen themselves, those are the two most viable, in my opinion, units for strategic reserves for cost-wise. And if you want something that's more of a rapid ingress, matchup dependent, of course, kind of punishing unit, the Breaker Boys work better in that case. The Knobs, just based off their profiles, so big that they want the shrug. But the Knobs also want to be a part of Gaz's lethal aura because they aren't necessarily at the best strength number. But in this case, they will have 2 turns to actually pick up on his lethal Waaagh. So if you position yourself correctly, it can be Gaz towing onto the middle objective, 20 Snaggas running up in front of him, and then a 10-man unit of Knobs near your natural expansion getting stuck in a fight and pushing the enemy back as your boys have stickied it or your Gretchens are holding it and you're kind of playing the reserve game and hunting down the toughest enemy unit with the Breaker Boy. Now, some would say, well, why do I need the Breaker Boy unit? You know, I can just bring maybe 10 more Knobs. That's fine. Knobs are just a really big profile and point cost. And like I said, you're already kind of going to be using the strats on these Knobs and the Meganobz, and you're also using strats for mortal wounds typically, like trying to get grenades off, or you might try to do the impact mortals from the Knobs themselves. So you might not see yourself having the CP to be running a bunch of Knobs units early game, like running all the CP to make them function. So Breaker Boys work that I can actually punch up into enemy units with the War Boss reliably. And I don't necessarily have to throw them out that first one. I can bring them the second one. And once I've already kind of gone out and touched things, as I've mentioned earlier. So that way, like if the enemy has a unit that's looking to dig the tar pit of 20 Snaggas out, the Breaker Boys are what's looking to actually respond in that case. And I like their profile. So like their profile is in like the size of the unit greater than the 10-man Knob unit. If someone was to ask, why would I not just bring more Knobs, right? So that's my opinion. And then we have 1 unit of Storm Boys. So in this list, I felt like there was enough OC, enough assets, enough killing potential for the most part, but you are kind of low on like knockout combo units. So in this case, it is very much about making contact with a bunch of units with your kind of more naked assets and then coming in with a big combo. Now, that first Waaagh, in my opinion, would want to be based timing wise off when that first 20-man unit can make contact. So I wouldn't call a Waaagh just for the boys to make contact. I would typically call a Waaagh right when I can get this 20-man unit into contact, and then the other units as a Knobs or Breaker Boys coming in secondarily would be more interesting to me. So that's more how this list would function in itself as well. So you let me know which version of Bully Boys you actually like, because this was a more casual version in my opinion. This one sits more like a 6.5, where I'm just kind of getting my stuff together. I don't really spam a bunch of things, and I'm just having fun with my lads. So that's it for my Orc Bully Boy archetype list. But now, like I said, this is live. Let me see what the poll has to say. So poll looks like I'll end the poll here. And what I had asked for the poll was, how many Meganobz are in your Bully Boys list? And it looks like about 40% of the chat said 15 to 18, which was pretty much about to be expected, about half of the player base. 28% says 10 to 12, and then 25% 5 to 6, and then 5% with none. So that pretty much worked out how I expected, and hopefully those lists kind of help reflect that and assist you in putting those lists together. As for what the chat has to say, shout out to the Gits. They say, whoa, for all the channel members. Check out the After Action Report and other content we're doing there. That way we can improve that and grow the great Waaagh. Shout out to channel members Arcane, Jank the Tank, The Weird Boy, Beast Boss, Squiggy. What's up, you kids? Tyler Howells, Sir Chubsalot. That's funny. So yeah. And now, as for Bully Boys, where they're at, I think Bully Boys can definitely make a breakthrough. If Flash Kids and Breaker Boys adopt the keyword, hopefully Breaker Boys do, that could go a long way. And I've had a lot of fun when the games do go my way for Bully Boys. And when they don't, I'm at least taking saves. I got army units to feel kind of tough. I've fallen back on Feel No Pain, fallen back on armor saves. I actually kind of appreciate that. So Even in the time that people might look down this attachment, I think it has a great ability to get stuck in, and you should too. So with that being said, there's only one thing to keep in mind. Don't cross a wall, because we'll knock your teeth out.